Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to be here. How many of y'all were here last year when I spoke to BIL? Only a few of you. That's very interesting. I owe a huge debt of gratitude to the BIL community. This isn't really about my main talk, but when I may give you a history that was not in we started out under an asset grant about almost 2 years ago. Long before LinkedIn existed, we were under NASA Institute of Advanced Concepts as a research team. And we had worked to take this science fiction concept of a space elevator and just test it to see if it was real, if it could actually be done. And we were working on the NASA umbrella for about 2 years. When the Space Shuttle Columbia crashed. And rightly so, NASA had to readjust everything it was doing. About $1 billion worth of programs worked out. And they had to figure out what made their very small asset. And at that point, we had a choice to make of do we keep going with what we're doing, or do we just stop it? And we chose to keep going the only way we knew how, which was as a commercial company to move this project forward. And that was challenging, and there's a lot of understanding on that. Because trust me, we cannot finance an elevator to space. Okay? So, things were going fine. 2003, 4, 5, 6, and 7, we were working at carbon nanotubes. I just had a fascinating conversation with Rick talking about his batteries and graphene and what the mistakes we made with our carbon nanotubes. We worked on robotics, we built high-altitude balloons tethered to the ground, with robots climbing back and forth. We were really kind of moving the tech forward the only way we knew how. The project was self-financed, meaning I was relatively well off at a relatively early age, and I basically paid for the project out of my own checkbook. We had 14 people, and but my wealth came from real estate, and y'all know what happened in real estate markets, right? So literally overnight, our project came to a screeching halt. I lost everything, and basically the project closed for about the last 5 years ago. We had a couple breakthroughs, and last year I came to BIL to give a pretty small talk to an audience that was kind of amazed and very interested and very enthusiastic and wanted to actively help. And honestly, I can say I'm standing here in a completely different space now. In the same way that the first speaker of our event, Carter, he took his follower numbers from like 40,000 last year at BIL to 800,000. In a year. I kind of have the same kind of thing happen to me. Partly because of BIL, we launched a Kickstarter campaign, and it's absolutely safe to say that that Kickstarter campaign changed my life, and maybe it might change the world. As an aside, that's why I was so excited to see Amanda Palmer here yesterday, because I learned some of my Kickstarter techniques from some of the stuff that she did. It was kind of awesome. I'm not showing my breasts though. Alright, let's get into this thing for real. Space elevators have been around in concept for over 100 years. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky invented them before the turn of the last century, in the late 1800s. Popular legend says he was looking at the Eiffel Tower and how high could you build and how high could you go, and if you could get into space, what would that mean? Tsiolkovsky predated Goddard by more than 30 years. He had some fundamental ideas, and it was pretty amazing stuff. Early in that time, though, it was very obvious that material sciences weren't strong enough to do the things we wanted to do, so it was just considered a thought experiment, and it stayed that way for a very long time. Fast forward into the 50s, another Russian, and then the 90s, the Americans got into it. material sciences weren't there. So we crashed. I tossed it this because the girl from Ipanema always comes up. I want you to think about that in a really interesting way. What if that girl could go walking on Mars? What if there was a beach on Mars? So just have that in the back of your head. We're going to talk about a couple big things. Civilization shifting technologies. I think that there are 7 civilization shifting technologies. Energy, materials, biosciences, communications, computing, robotics, and ultimately space. All of those other technologies are foundational. Space is a chemical technology because you can't get there without mastery of the others. All right? The other concept is that infrastructure begets infrastructure. The more complicated, the better your foundation of technology is, the more things you can put on top of it. The cell phone in your pocket requires an incredibly complicated subsystems of infrastructure that actually go back hundreds of years. Super projects usually impact an area in a regional way. So, for example, the pyramids impacted that culture pretty dramatically. So did creating the Great Wall. But those are regional style programs. They're super projects. Certainly they transformed the regions they were in, but they didn't change everything. The first super project that started being super regional and started changing everything was probably the Panama Canal. And arguably, the Apollo program is, I think, the most important super project because space impacts all of us. It doesn't matter if you live under a democracy or a theocracy. It doesn't matter if you're in a pirate state in Northern Africa, the coast of Africa. It doesn't matter if you're under the heel of a dictator. Space assets impact all of us. Whether you're going to a hospital, whether you're using GPS, whether you're using it for military purposes, space is really important, and it's everywhere that you look. And I wanted to keep those concepts in mind when we start talking about the elevator. There are 2 main systems. The Earth system is the one you're probably most familiar with. Imagine a ball and a string, spinning over your head. The string in the middle stays straight. Right? So now expand that to an Earth-sized system. The Earth rotates. You have a counterweight deep out of space with a long, strong string. The mechanics are the same, and that string will stay straight. You can literally climb the string back and forth into space. You can go to space without rockets. That's a fundamental transformative technology that will change everything. Less known is an idea of a lunar elevator. Now, after more than almost a dozen years working on the Earth elevator, we simply couldn't build it. We don't have the tech. If y'all were here, I heard Dr. Canada a few minutes ago, graphene is awesome, carbon nanotubes are awesome, but the tech isn't there to build the system that I'm dreaming about. So the breakthrough that we had about a year ago was we can build a lunar elevator now, today, with current technology. Current rockets, current materials, current computing, current robotics, everything is there. If I had a warehouse the size of IKEA, put all this stuff in it, I could build the elevator. Now, that's really kind of important. So that's what we're really talking about. I don't have any pretty pictures, I'm not really that kind of guy. Imagine here's the Earth, here's the Moon. Right about here is called the Lagrange point. It's where the gravity from the Earth balances against the gravity of the Moon. And it's kind of those 4 points of space. So if you could take a rocket from the Earth, launch to the Lagrange point, drop a string down to the surface of the Moon, sink into the surface of the Moon, stay there, and then pull that string back, not touching the Earth, but back towards the Earth. The Earth's gravity holds everything in place. The Earth's gravity holds that string straight, and now you have now you have a mechanism that you can climb back and forth the surface of the moon with. Is it as cool as the Earth nowhere? Maybe not. But we haven't gone back to the moon for 40 years because we don't have the capacity to soft land on the moon. The technology to soft land on the moon is substantially harder than it is to soft land on Mars. So it's easier to go to Mars, even though it's a lot further away. So we've been working on this lunar system for only about a year, and I'll tell you the truth, we don't even have all the questions yet, let alone have all the answers. But the process that we're going through says that if we can do this, there are 14 nations with more than 30 different rockets that could go with us. So instead of being a program of footsteps and flags and being a propaganda tool, it becomes a tool where everybody can get involved, global participation. It's going to be kind of like the Antarctica. A few guys went there and they lived over 50 years. And a few more folks went there, and a few more, and a few more. But what we can do by building our lunar elevator, we figure we can get 3 people every 3 weeks to the moon. Out of 7.25 billion people, maybe that's not so much, but 3 people every 3 weeks will change everything because the impacts, the things that we learn in the process of going there will impact all of our lives. So by comparing it to the International Space Station, 260 miles up, and the Space Shuttle, which is a $500 million bird to fly every time it needs to fly, we think we can send 3 people for $50 million, 1/10 the price, 1,000 times further. Okay? That's really what this is about for us. We talked about how building it is pretty difficult. But there's a profound difference between difficult, very, very hard, and impossible. Right? So building the lunar elevator is difficult. We have string right now that we can do this with. It's the thickness of dental floss. That's it. Dental floss is building an elevator on the moon. The string happens to be 250 million kilometers long, so it's a lot of dental floss. But it can be done. And it's going to matter because the technology that we use to develop this thing is going to come back and improve the lives of everybody here. Everybody knows their lives are going to be better by being here this time. I think it's the only super project that will potentially unify us as a human species. I sometimes refer to us as a single point of failure species. Right? I don't want to be a single point of failure species. I want to move us to the stars. The first step is the moon. The immediate step after that is Mars. And then who knows, right? So that's where I think it's going to take us. And the technology that we use to build it, I'm a capitalist, right? So the technology that we use to build this, I think is going to be profoundly valuable, but make lives better. And that's really what I'm going. So what if you use an elevator to take a kid, not just to Mars, but what if that girl grew up on Mars? I think we're really close to that. That's all I got. I got like 1 minute of questions. I'm having a really hard time hearing you. Can you tell me the process to what? Alright, so describing the trip and the process and how to use the system. So you would launch from Earth. There's 30 rockets that can do it, so that's actually relatively straightforward. You launch from Earth. Elon Musk has a price of $50 million, so that's the price tag we're talking about. You launch from Earth to the Lagrange point. You hook in with a very small space station. And then from that point, you get into a robot, and the robot will take about 7 to 10 days. So it's like being in a Winnebago, but the view's going to be pretty awesome. One, 3 minutes of questions? Oh, I have more time. Okay, great. Yes, yes, sir. How much would the project cost? And how does your venture capitalist make it like that? My favorite question. It's about $800 million to construct the robotic system. That's about a 9-year process, 8-year process. About 4 more years after that, and about $200 million to build a human-rated system. So that's stepping stone. Traditional VC is not going to cover a $1 billion program. But there's a whole bunch of spin-off technologies. We have roughly 20-ish, maybe 25 potential patents that have commercial value now today that we can use to start spinning out really we created new alloy, we have some robotic technology, we have some communication technology. So we refer to ourselves as an idea factory where we create all these new core technologies that focus on the elevator, but we spin that tech as fast as we can. The last thing that you want me to be doing is running a company that builds an alloy. We have a very interesting new alloy. We found it by accident. I'm not the guy to run that, but that's something that a VC can take. We hand them a package of assets, and then they run out and move into the world. Does that make sense? All right. Yes, sir. Okay, great. One last question, and that's it. Yes. So what's the alloy? I wanted to name it micheal, but we couldn't get the licensing for it. Yeah, it was a stupid move that just came out recently. Whatever. We wanted to call it micheal. We mixed carbon nanotubes into silver, and we got some very interesting results. We found this by accident. We have an awesome fan community. Our fans are awesome. Some kids were getting married, and they didn't want diamonds for their wedding ring. Their phrase was, diamonds are the 20th century symbol for strength. We want the 21st century symbol for strength. That's carbon nanotubes. They wanted a wedding ring made of carbon nanotubes. I couldn't do that. I said, look, if I could do that, then I'd be building a space elevator and I'd be kind of busy. So, can't do that. But we talked and after a little while, we were able to make a different. And so they've got the first 2 wedding rings here in this development. It's kind of cool. On our Kickstarter campaign, we actually gave that as one of our rewards, and we sold 9. And one of them, I can't name names, that's really inappropriate, but one of them is a brand name Silicon Valley superstar, which I'd like to tell you, but I'm not going to. So it's interesting. It's an interesting story. We found them that we made the chill last. Okay. That's all I got. I have a bunch of cards. If you guys want to be involved in the project, I'd love that. I'm super easy to find. Emily on Twitter, Laine in the report. This is ELSI. ELSI stands for Lunar Space Elevator Infrastructure, LSEI. Cal is kind of stupid. We liked giraffes because giraffes are genetically designed to reach as far as they can go. That's what we did. So